Welcome to section 3.1. In chapter 3, we're going to focus on probability, which, as we'll see, is very much like data distributions. Sometimes probability distributions are theoretical, other times they are based on data, and we'll discuss the distinction. Let's start by introducing the very idea of probability. And we're going to start by talking about how probability might be applicable in your various occupations, right, or your various interests. Probability is all about uncertain. Something may or may not happen, and we would like to figure out how likely it is that something's going to happen. So, what are some questions we might ask related to probability? In games, if you're playing a game where rolling a 20-sided die is relevant, you might say, there's a typo there, I apologize, but you might ask, will my 20-sided die roll over a 15, right? If that's needed for some particular outcome in your game. Or how likely is it that I roll a number greater than 15 on a 20-sided die? In a video game, if you're playing, you might ask something like, will my characters hit land? How likely is it that I'm going to actually hit whatever I'm fighting in a game? Or, a little bit more precisely, if I use this weapon up against an enemy that has this kind of armor, how much damage or what is the likely range of damage that I can expect to obtain? In business, you might say, how many customers might purchase this product or service that I came up with for my business? That's going to be uncertain, right? And so you might ask, how likely is this range of customers versus this range of new customers? You might ask, if you have to buy insurance for something, or if you're considering purchasing insurance for something, how likely is this accident going to is it that this accident covered by the insurance policy? How likely is that? Is it enough to justify paying the premium? You might ask a question when thinking about having accountants on an accounting firm on retainer. How likely is it that my business will be audited by the IRS? These are all uncertainties that we can address and we can talk about using probability. Social justice has plenty of uncertainty as well. How likely is it if I'm running a clinic that I'll get a grant for my social work clinic if I'm applying for grant funding? How likely is it that if you're managing a domestic violence event, that the way you handle it, your approach to the situation at hand, would actually result in more violence rather than less? How likely is it that if you're working with released felons and trying to help them integrate into society, under whatever the circumstances are, how likely is it that they'll commit another crime? And then health, uncertainty is all over the place. If you're either trying to decide or recommend a treatment for something, how likely is it that that treatment will actually work? If you're talking about medication, how likely are side effects? If you're talking about dental health, right? How likely is it that I'll get a cavity if I only brush once a day instead of twice a day? So all of these questions are questions where there's uncertainty and isn't a yes or no answer. The answer is more, well, 60% of the time this will happen, 40% of the time this other thing will happen. Or maybe there's 7 possible things that can happen, each with their own probabilities. And that's what probability addresses, how likely certain events are to happen. In the next video, we'll talk a little bit about the vocabulary of probability and give some examples.